Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Right now there are fierce battles happening in the eastern side of Ukraine. So let's jump in and I will explain you what's happening and what we can expect in the coming days. So first things first, there are a couple of really hot zones. I would say that there are three. It's the same ones that we discussed before. It's the north area, it's the Bakhmut area, and it's Avdiivka area. Vuhledar area that used to be how do you say, important for Russians to push through, right now has been kind of died down, so it's currently outside of the active cycle. Let's quickly talk about Svatova Kremina. Here we know that Ukrainians are advancing around this area. And, okay, sorry, blue for Ukrainians. I always forget, sorry. So Ukrainians are advancing in this area and they're advancing south of Kremina. Over the last couple of days, there have been reports that Ukrainians are already operating close to the southern border of Kremina and their main forces are advancing towards the road. You might ask me, Georgie, but you already reported that Ukraine has already reached the road and there was already advancements. Yes, but there are two very important differences. The first one is that Ukraine tried to still use a lot of the fast-moving advanced tactics by using light vehicles to advance forward fast. However, at that point, then Russians were able to counterattack and push Ukrainians back. So Ukraine kind of changed the tactics just a little bit, and now they're using more of the main force to advance forward. It's a slower grinding progress, but it's a progress with a main force advantage going forward. So that's why we can say that it's not just Ukrainian, some forward troops that are advancing towards the road, but it's the actual main bulk of the Ukrainian forces in the area that are finally reaching the desired outcomes. With that said, however, I would still hold your horses. We still don't know how much power Ukraine really has. And I already explained that Russians have been reinforcing Svatova Kremina line for a while now. So it's not going to be an easy target. So take it with a grain of salt that something is happening, but it's definitely positive to see that Ukraine is trying to advance. Now, the hottest direction, that is obviously the Bakhmut now. It's what happened is we knew that Russians were trying to advance Bakhmut, and I explained to you that it failed. Then they tried doing it the same around Opitne and a little bit north, and those also kind of didn't work out. So now they've decided to, okay, let's do this push around the far south of Bakhmut. And because they were able also to get additional forces from the Kherson Oblast, they're now reinforcing it. So they're also doing like an Opitne, and they're also trying to advance this direction. So Russia has now three kind of main directions of advancements all around Bakhmut, which obviously intensifies activities and fights all around the city. And Russia has been getting additional reinforcements coming in to the areas where they're having some kind of limited success. This, of course, corresponds well with Ukrainians also sending in their reinforcements. And now we're in the position where one side is sending reinforcements and trying to defend, and then the other side is also sending more reinforcements here to attack instantly already kind of on three directions. It is right now a big bloodbath that is happening there. It was hard before, it was a grinding positional fighting right now, but now it's an actual active fighting. It seems that Ukraine wants to use their reinforcements that they got to push Russians back, and Russians obviously want to attack. So it's two sides counterattacking each other, very active fighting. We're gonna see where it's gonna end, but it's not a pretty sight, let's put it this way. Reports from there are quite tough. Then let's talk about Pisky. So Russia is trying to move towards Vodene. It tries to move towards Nevelske, but both of those directions have been stopped, and Ukrainians are holding Russians in place. Some people have said, like, well, what about Avdiivka? Is it threatened yet? Russians really want to threaten Avdiivka, but Avdiivka has been holding there for the whole of this campaign. So for now, Ukrainians are still holding it steadily, and fighting are not yet happening inside of this smaller settlement. So for now, this is fine. But this is, if you will look at the artillery map, this is where the hottest action is happening. Around Vuhledar, I already explained, the battles died down, so not much is happening here. We've seen a little bit more artillery strikes in between the front lines around Hulaipole area, but nothing that would indicate that there may be yet a massive push expected, so that we can look at. And I want to clear out something. There was a little bit of misunderstanding around this area, or was it, sorry, not this area, it was, I think, a little bit down here. So, Institute for Study of War reported that Ukrainians have established their positions on the left bank of the Dnipro River, the southern one, and that's kind of not true. Ukrainians just crossed the river on the boat and just put a flag on the like a building crane, like a, not building crane, but like a transport crane. So it wasn't really establishing positions. That is a little bit untrue. What we know for sure is that Russians have been pretty much pulling a lot of their equipment and troops out of the area, and we can confidently say that all of this is controlled by the Russians very nominally. It seems that they don't have a lot of troops there, mostly a skeleton crew that choose just to monitor if Ukrainians would or would not start crossing the river and trying to do any kind of potential naval assault, which I don't think they will, so we should not also expect it. That's today it for the map update. So the biggest question that is right now is what's happening around Bakhmut and which way will it go, but I will keep you updated on it. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time. And we're going to jump now into the vlogging camera. So let's talk about the many important things. So first news that I have written here, there has been reports by the British intelligence because of some of the either either leaked or recovered like polls from the Russian side that the support for the Russian campaign, Russian military action has been falling down. It was, I believe, last time in July it was 57% in favor of the special military operation, and now it's around 25% that are in favor of the special military operation, which means also that there is around 50% that are undecided. And I've heard a lot of optimism because of that. That it states that it's clearly showing that the support for the special military operation is failing. And I agree. And I want to say that this is not happening just because the special military operation is taking their time. This is also happening because Ukrainians are obviously winning, and they have been able to liberate Kherson, they've been able to liberate Kharkiv Oblast. And the more Ukraine liberates, the faster this support for special military operation will wane. But what I want to underscore is that a lot of the people I've talked to, they think that if people say that they don't support the special military operations, that means that they also are against it. That is not true. The absolutely dominant position. So what we need to understand is, like, if there is a 25% people that support the Russian war in Ukraine, that means that there's 25% of people that says we want to kill Ukrainians. We want to kill as many Ukrainians as we can and take their land and destroy their culture. That is the 25%. That is quite a lot when you think about this. Secondly, the 50% that is in the middle, the most dominant way of thinking right now for them is, at least from what I've heard, their responses and so on, is Russia has already started this campaign, and Russia cannot do wrong, right? We cannot do wrongly things. Like, if there was a good reason, if we have started something, if Putin started something, there must have been just a good reason for it. So I think maybe it obviously is not going as well, but I still think that we should finish it. Whenever they're asked about the let's talk about negotiations and so on, negotiations in a absolute majority of the Russian perception is Ukraine negotiating for a ceasefire with Russia. So Russia essentially either keeping parts of Ukraine or even Ukraine surrendering to Russia. Negotiations in a Russian mind is not an equal party negotiations. So we need to be very, very clear whenever there's a discussion about negotiations, especially with the pollsters, what kind of question was asked. Because if you ask maybe Ukrainians and say, like, would you agree negotiating peace with Putin if all the Russian forces would be out of Ukraine, you would see that there is a lot of positive responses. And then saying this, like, well, we asked Ukrainians and they said, like, that ending this war negotiation is very favorable. You see the manipulation potential. And the same is happening with the Russians. A lot of the questions that are asked, if it's just like, do you wish Ukraine would start negotiating right now with Russia? And I'm pretty sure that a lot of these people would say that yes, they would like to. But in their mind, negotiations means just a capitulation by the Ukrainians. That is the couple of important things to keep in mind. And talking about kind of negotiation brings me to the second point that I want to talk about today is the Western politics and expectations. If you haven't followed my channel, if you haven't seen the previous video, I think it's good time again to bring up the point that I've made multiple times, is that we still have a lot of both people and also politicians in Western countries that are having a desire to return to the pre-23rd February world. They want to return to the world where there was no threatening Russia, there was no war, there was some kind of business, we were benefiting each other, it was peace and butterflies and everything. One of the kind of main things, for example, that I saw, and I know that we're slowly changing our perception, and I want to show here the quote from Olaf Scholz when he said it recently. In his speech, he criticized Russia for what Russia is doing. He, in no terms, was saying that Russia and what Russia is doing is good. But I want you to listen to his quote and see if you can spot what I'm talking about. He says, we have to go back to the agreements we had with Russia, in parentheses, we had in the last decades, and which were the basis for peace and security order in Europe. This is the rhetoric that I was always referring to. It is the thinking that if the war just ends and Ukraine and Russia negotiate something, or we're going to go into some kind of ceasefire, then we're going to go back to the war. Like, then Russia and Russia's crimes are pretty much forgiven, I would guess. Like, so we go into some kind of building the same world that we built before. And what I think, why is this dangerous, is because we're missing the point. We're missing that a lot of our previous ways that we were conducting our business is that we have not learned from it. It was the way that we conducted our business that brought upon us the Russia that we're having now. A lot of the Russian wealth and a lot of the Russian power currently is completely built by our money and money from my parents and people that were living in Europe before I grew up. So previous generations helped to get this politics. So we need to understand that we also did errors. We need to reconsider what kind of things we did that brought some kind of threat upon us on the European continent again, and we need to fix it. So when I hear something that we need to go back to something, we're going to go back in time when we were feeding money to a monster that is potentially threatening all our lives or even everyone else's lives on the planet Earth, to be honest. And in that sense, I'm very happy to hear, and I'm very happy to see also that we see more and more younger politicians, I mean younger in a political aspect, don't get me wrong again with the ageism. I mean the younger in the political, the new generation of politicians, such as Sanna Marin, that very recently made a really great kind of cold shower onto European politicians. She presented it in a way that says, like, I'm going to be brutally honest, that EU is weak. The European Union is weak. Europe is weak. We're extremely dependent on the US. And if there would not be support for US, then we would be in serious trouble. We are not able to take care of ourselves. And what does it tell you about us as Europeans if after looking and having some kind of crises, we're looking at ourselves and it's like, okay, we cannot even take care of ourselves. I am really believing in Sanna Marin that she sees some kind of new vision. And instead of going back to the contracts and agreements and mentality that we had before the war. I think we should take this as a learning experience and actually see how we can become better going out of this conflict rather than sticking to what got us into it in the first place. So thank you so much for watching. I want to say huge thanks to all of the Patreons and YouTube members. I am gonna try and do more videos with the next week, but it's gonna be kind of a little bit busy. So I'm aiming for 3 videos a week going forward. Thank you so much. I love you all. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you next time.